All right. Right. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Apologies for the late start. I'd like to welcome members and officers to this cabinet meeting, and also welcome anybody who's watching us online via our YouTube channel this evening. Before we begin, I would like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain how proceedings will work this evening.
Can I just check that those attending remotely can be heard? Sarah Kingsley?
Yes, present.
Ian Cooper?
Yes, I'm here.
And Chloe Hipwood?
Yes, I'm here.
If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, the microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. Are there any questions? I will now hand back to the chair, Councillor Elizabeth Dennis-Harbour.
Lovely, thank you very much. So first item, I have apologies for absence from councillors Ruth Brown, Amy Allen and Keith Hoskins, and Councillor Tom Plater has sent his apologies as deputy. He won't be attending this evening. Again, doesn't need to be formally recorded, but sometimes deputies like to keep us up to date with things. I don't think I have any further apologies for absence from anyone. Nope. In accordance with council policy, this meeting is being audio recorded as well as filmed. The audio recording will be available on the North Herts Council website and the film recording via the North Herts Council YouTube channel. Members are reminded that this council has declared a climate emergency. This is a serious decision and means that as this is an emergency, all of us, officers and members, have that in mind as we carry out various roles and tasks for the benefit of our district. More details are included on the agenda front sheet. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under the chair's announcements on the agenda. Public participation at this meeting, we have none, which brings me on to the only item that we're considering tonight, which is the future service design of waste recycling and street cleansing services. And Councillor Tom Tyson, the Deputy Executive Member for Recycling and Waste, is going to introduce that. So I'll pass over to Tom.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this report seeks the authority to proceed with a competitive dialogue procurement for the waste and recycling collection and street cleansing contract due to expire in May 2025. The report is based on outcomes from the member-led joint working group between East Herts Council and North Herts Council and identifies key service changes affecting the contract specification drafting. The report covers details of both East Herts and North Herts changes in order to fully identify the impacts across the shared service. The key drivers for the service changes are set in the context of the pending National Resources and Waste Strategy consultation outcomes and the financial challenges authorities are facing, which are exacerbated by inflationary pressures. It is anticipated that the proposed changes will secure a more financially and environmentally sustainable service, as well as making our joint contract attractive to the market. Our pre-engagement work having identified that aligned services is a key consideration for bidders. In particular, members are asked to consider extended frequency residual waste collections for the majority of households, supported by a continuation of weekly food and fortnightly dry recycling collections, and the cessation of textiles and battery curbside collection services. Service proposals will be supported with a major communications plan and additional staff resource to ensure a smooth transition to the new services. And at that point, I'd just like to ask our officer, Chloe, if there's anything she wants to add to that.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Nothing to add at this stage, but of course, any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Right, so thank you very much. There are a number of recommendations in this report. We've got 18 of them. I don't propose to run through each of them in turn. We also have the note referred to as from Overview and Scrutiny, which is attached as agenda, it's under agenda item 4, appendix 12 in ModGov. It's a separate document. There were 3 points that came out of that scrutiny meeting, which were concerns over the capacity of the 180 litre residual waste bins if there is a move to 3 weekly collections, concerns regarding those with a large amount of waste, for example, families with nappies, and a query over whether enough public consultation took place, and the need to ensure that residents are aware of any changes through ongoing communications. And we've been asked to sort of note that, as well as the comments from officers and the debates which took place at scrutiny. So with all of that in mind, colleagues, over to you for comments, questions, queries, debate on the report that we've got. Yes, Councillor Jarvis.
Thanks. Yeah, a couple of questions. I noticed reading the climate change sections, particularly, which is I expect I've done. I noticed 719 refers to what East Herts Council has done in terms of climate change, but doesn't mention anything about the North Herts Climate Emergency Declaration, or that we've got some rather more ambitious targets in terms of net zero than it seems that East Herts have. So I wonder why that was missing. And in 723, it talks about looking at options for reducing the council's carbon footprint during the pre-engagement work. I guess if it means options as to which things we do, then I'm happy with that. If the options mean whether we do it or not, then I think that's a significant issue. I mean, I happen to think that we should be challenging contractors to explain how they are going to meet our carbon reduction targets rather than telling them how to do it. But I do think we need to be clear that it has to be done. And 723 is capable of being read in that's optional, and it really shouldn't be. And we've got some good proposals in terms of there are some carbon benefits from reducing the frequency of residual waste collections, but they only reduce the carbon emissions of waste collection by about 12%. So we need to do a lot better than that. I just think we need to be clear that that's what we mean by 723, if that is what we mean.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I think I might be minded to agree with you, certainly on 723 and the clarity of that. I don't know, Chloe, if you sort of want to add any points in referencing North Herts specific climate change policies, or if Sarah's able to assist on that and just ensure that we are proceeding with something that is relevant and specific to this council, not another place.
Yes, indeed. So just to confirm, we have engaged with some consultants, Eunomia, to help us work through some wording that we're going to be including in our contract to look at securing improvements in the carbon impacts that the service has. We of course are also looking at all the technologies available in relation to things like electric fleet. That's still not 100% there for us at the moment. So therefore, we're also looking at options around things like alternative fuels like HVO, which would enable us to reduce our carbon on a sort of interim basis. But we're of course looking at the sustainability of that fuel in any decision making that we make, and of course then what mechanisms for price changes we need to consider in the contract. So it's all being looked at. And we're also obviously wanting to make sure that any bidders are clear on what our sort of expectations are in relation to reducing the carbon impact for the council.
Okay, thank you very much, Chloe. Are you coming back in, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pleased to hear that, and it doesn't come as a surprise because I thought that's what was happening. I mean, that is not reflected in any of the recommendations. And whereas we know that Chloe is doing the right thing, perhaps we should make sure that it's publicly recorded that is one of the things that we're doing.
Are you proposing an additional recommendation? Could we have some words, or do you want to think about some words, and I'll go to Councillor Albert while you're thinking about them? Yeah, Ian.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, obviously it's disappointing that the chair of overview and scrutiny can't be with us tonight to reflect the obviously the particular concerns, and I think as cabinet we do take very seriously the concerns raised by overview and scrutiny. So it's helpful, I think, for overview and scrutiny to come here and tell us about those concerns. But I think it's important that even in that absence, that we do actually specifically pick up at those points and read those into the record of this meeting. So I don't know whether whether either Tom or perhaps sort of Chloe or Sarah could pick up those three specific points and provide us with some additional information about that. And just one other question, which obviously someone, you know, I mean, I was thinking about in an idle moment some weeks back. I know this is in the detail, but it does seem to me that in moving to the 3 weekly collection, I mean, I think my sad little back of an envelope worked out that basically every 6 weeks from the 8th week of the 3 weekly connections, there will be bin fests taking place, with every single bin, box and thing out on one particular collection day. I just wondered, obviously, how obviously we are going to both communicate, and obviously the teams are going to manage that, because I think it is a concern about being a recipe. Certainly I know from my own personal experience where you've got not roads where bins aren't just neatly placed outside a single house because that's where they are. You've got terraced houses and other groups of houses where bins are all placed all together. It's just a recipe for actually bins getting missed. So I'd be interested just to sort of hear some thoughts just around that. But obviously more particularly on those three overview and scrutiny questions, just so some more information, just so before we come to a conclusion on it. And also, Chair, I mean, I might have something more and something else to raise just on the alignment stuff, but I'll come back to that a bit later.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't know, Tom or Chloe, do you want to take the sort of scrutiny points, and then definitely Chloe on the practicalities of Binfest?
Oh, here we go. Yes, on the overview and scrutiny points, the first one was about the capacity of the 180 litre residual bin, our purple bin, to sort of suffice for a 3 week period. And there are two elements to this. One is that we, at the time this contract begins, we will start taking plastic film, soft plastics, into the dry recycling stream, and that will remove a lot of bulk from the purple bin and take the pressure off those bins to quite a considerable extent, I think. And hopefully that will assure some of the residents who have already expressed their worries about that they'll be able to cope. The other thing is that we know from research that's been done that some of the stuff that's in the purple bins basically shouldn't really be there. So there's a lot of food waste still, even since we've had the food caddies for quite some time now. Almost a quarter of what's in the purple bin is food waste. And we need to be able to get the message out there to help people to correct that. And equally, there's also dry recycling still in purple bins, which could come out, not to mention compost and garden waste as well. So there's room for, you know, for considerable improvement, and the brief that we have really is just to make sure that we can communicate that in as helpful a way as possible. The second point, families with a large amount of waste will be able to qualify for fortnightly collection. So if you've got a lot of nappies being produced or hygiene waste, then we'll still be able to come by fortnightly for that. And finally, the third point that was raised was about communication, I think. Yeah. Oh, the consultation. Oh, yeah. Yep. So around 2,000 or so North Herts residents completed the survey. We are where we are with that. I mean, I think that's a decent sample, and the outcomes from that were quite encouraging to some extent. The majority of our residents have said they've got room left in their bins at the end of that fortnightly period, and many of them said they've got quite a lot of room, in fact. Obviously, there's some worries about whether people could cope, but it didn't always match up with the people who are answering that they'd got full bins. So we have to look at those results quite carefully. And I think that on the whole, they show us that, you know, the majority of people will be able to cope. And in particular, once we take that soft plastic out of the purple bin, the residual stream, we'll have made a big advancement there for them.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Tom. And I think, you know, as we said in previous meetings, it will help and assist Cabinet if the chair or vice chair of scrutiny is able to come and present and add a bit more colour to the reports that we receive, because I know what Tom has given us is largely what's in the bullet points and what was presented to scrutiny. So if scrutiny still felt after that explanation that there were further concerns, it would benefit us if the chair of scrutiny could come and really explain and assist Cabinet colleagues as a critical friend. Right. So the other point is, I think, probably best for Chloe, which was Councillor Albert's back of an envelope bin fest, which doesn't sound like a festival I want to go to. Can you give us some assistance, please, Chloe?
Yes, so just to sort of reassure councillors and members of the public that, of course, all the collection crews operate within cab systems. So from a vehicle perspective, we aren't expecting vehicles to all end up in the same street at the same time. In terms of the bins ending up on the same street out at the same time, we are aware of that. We've obviously been looking at what other councils are doing in relation to managing that. One of our options is to, of course, consider things like garden waste being collected on a different day of the week or on the opposite week to dry recycling, as it, you know, from now, which we're all going to be considered as we go along. Obviously, one of our key aims is to ensure that we don't have a huge amount of disruption to residents. So it's a bit of a balance. And we'll be talking to bidders about what they've done in other councils where they've introduced services of this nature. In terms of residents being informed about, you know, and keeping on top of, you know, which bins to put on which week, we are looking at electronic notification options as part of, you know, the communications plan we're going to be putting forward. And I expect some more details around, you know, what our recommendations are in that regard to come forward in the spring report that we've talked about, where we're looking at sort of customer service as a whole and how, you know, some of these more detailed elements of the service will come forward. There are things like bin apps that some councils use to notify residents about what to put out on bin days. And of course, there's things like text messaging services that we currently use, as well as, you know, email notifications and things like that. So all in the mix at the moment, but we will be looking at new ways of communicating which bins to put out on which day.
Right, thank you very much. I can see you hovering, but I know Judy's been waiting. Oh, I'm going to go to Judy first.
The original things I wanted to say have now been added to, I'm afraid, and picking up the point about keeping it as simple as possible for residents. I do know from my conversations with residents that many of them haven't a clue what day their bins are going to be collected and just look at their neighbours and hope that their neighbours have got it right, and do it that way. My method is to drive through Gravely on a Tuesday and see whatever Steve's put outside his house, because I know that that'll be the same as what I have to do on a Friday, except when we have bank holidays, it all gets very muddled up and it doesn't work. So that's what I do. I think Tom made, and indeed today I checked what it was. So the other really important point I think Tom makes is, I'm sorry, all the points you make are important. I didn't mean to suggest otherwise, but one just made me think about my own bad practices and how we can improve. So my residual purple bin does have too many items in it that could have gone into recycling. But at that moment, I didn't have time to wash them out and they're filthy. There's a tin full of bits of dog food. And so I think, oh, I haven't got time to wash it. And I sling it in the wrong bin. I put it in the bin in my kitchen, which is to go to residual waste. So there are things like that as well, where I think not just education, but some of us just having words with ourselves could learn to improve. The consultation point was another one I wanted to make, because it does seem to me as though the sorts of responses we've been getting have been very much more positive than what I personally recall was the case maybe back in about 2018, was it? It certainly wasn't 19, it was 18. Yeah, 17, 18. Okay, so that's encouraging as well in terms of what some of us have learned to do more willingly than we did then. But oh, this is so annoying. My computer has switched itself off from the page I wanted, which was right. But I'm also massively disappointed that there is nobody here to speak for the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, because I found the summarised points that should be noted and presented to Cabinet so extraordinary, particularly the one about concerns about regarding those with a large amount of waste, for example, families with nappies. Surely they'd had all the papers that we've had. So they would have known that if you've got 3 children in nappies or a multiple birth about to arrive or whatever, we've already said in several places that that is going to be accommodated, and not being able to have that conversation with the duly elected representative, by which I mean the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, just seems, well, it seems a bit rude for a start, and dismissive of them, not to be willing, if they care that much, to come and talk to us about it. And the other thing I didn't understand, and maybe this is a slightly niche point about the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting, is that I don't completely understand why people who've attended a workshop then feel they're not allowed to discuss something in Overview and Scrutiny. What kind of strange constitutional rule made Adam Compton and I think somebody else later, or Alistair Willoughby, recuse themselves from that conversation on the basis that they'd been to a workshop? Aren't we supposed to be the best informed that we can in order to make the best decisions that we can? And I know it's not just about this issue, but I would like that looked into at some point. Thank you. I think that was it.
Thank you. I think nothing to come back on there, unless Tom or anyone. No, I think we're all labouring a scrutiny point quite a bit, aren't we? And I think that's for good reasons. I think certainly me and Ian are very aware of what happens with waste contracts when scrutiny gets involved, and the value of effective and adequate scrutiny. I think that the waste workshops that we did over the summer were absolutely excellent and gave every member the opportunity at both councils to get involved and to really have a look. We also had briefings that came back out of those workshops, and then this item has gone to scrutiny. So it has been looked at in a more open and transparent way than certainly the last contract was. But equally, as we've all said, I think that if scrutiny still, having had access to more data and information about our waste contract than it has had previously, does have those concerns, somebody ought to be here to represent it. And if the chair can't physically be here, I would expect him certainly to maybe ask his vice chair to come and present. I don't know whether or not she was approached or asked if he wasn't available, but that's by the by, and that's something that we can absolutely look at. No. Right, but no. Okay, you said something around the 3 weekly waste collections. Those are on the recommendations. When we come through to look at what we're doing, then we might have a wider think about that. but I'll go back to Ian, who I think had a follow-on point and might now have more points.
No, I mean, I've not got loads more points. I think really just to say, I think just to echo the point, really to thank, the team, obviously Tom, Amy is not here tonight, Sarah and Chloe for all the work that's been done to get us to this stage, and all the workshops, which is a huge effort. Obviously, I think certainly I'd like to put on record, I'm sure cabinet colleagues will want to, join me in that, and obviously thanking, all the team and all the staff, and obviously those here and those not here tonight for all that work. I mean, I support the recommendations and potentially, sort of Steve's, additional one if it comes up some form of words. I just really wanted just briefly to touch on 2.17 in the recommendations, which is around agreeing the principle of aligning the garden waste collection charge from 2025. And I think that makes absolute sense in a new contract, and aligning the services there that East Herts and North Herts are doing, and making it simpler in terms of systems in getting payments for garden waste and so on. But certainly I think I recognise from my finance out, and I know obviously Amy and I know Tom do from their sort of portfolio hat, that clearly there is how we get to that point obviously needs to be dealt with very carefully and sensitively between now and 2025. Sorry, seem to be cutting out a bit. But now in 2025, sorry, I'm not. Yeah, it's but yeah. So I think that we will need obviously to look sort of carefully at and come back with some additional proposals around in the coming weeks. But I think just wanted to put on record that we do recognise that there is steps needed to actually get us to that point, and we want to do that, particularly bear in mind the sensitivity at the moment for people in their finances and so on. And I think that's obviously something we'll look at and come back with obviously more formal proposals around how we're going to do that in North Herts. But no, happy to support the recommendations as tabled in front of us.
Thank you very much, Ian. And sort of just to clarify, that 2.17 is an agreement of the principle, but it doesn't obviously set out how we're going to get there. That's something that we need to look at and go away and think very hard and carefully about the detail. I know that Ian and Tom and Amy are working on that. Sean.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I just want to say a big thank you, just echo Ian's comments to officers and members. It's a really thorough and detailed report. Mine's more of a comment and a thought for the future, really, but I am supportive of the recommendations in the report. In particular, moving to 3 weekly collections. I think we should remember that we declared a climate change emergency in 2019, and this will go some way to helping protect our environment. So I am supportive of that. And also it strikes a good balance, because we are saying, look, for those who really need it, larger families, we will help you and support you. So I think it strikes a really good balance, and it will help protect the environment. So I am supportive of that. The one thing which is a thought for the future, and I don't want to sound like I'm virtue signaling, because I promise you I'm not, but our recycling bin is always full to the brim, always full to the brim. We have to ask neighbours if we can borrow theirs. And if we're going to be pushing people to make sure they're using the right bins as we move forward, not a concern, because I suppose it's a good thing, but how we manage that moving forward when people are using their recycling bins more, because I'm going to suggest that people will have overflowing recycling bins. I think that is likely, the more we push forward with that. So it's something to give some thought to, because if we're going to include things like soft plastics, that is a very large possibility. So just to give some thought for that as we move forward, we probably need larger recycling bins, or think of some other ways around that.
Thank you very much, Sean. I think part of the answer to that will be if and when the government's recycling and waste strategy ever gets across the line and comes into force, we might see changes in the types of material that go into recycling and deposit return schemes, etc., that could start to reduce what people are having to recycle at home. There may also be producer responsibility elements that change the types of packaging and hopefully reduce some of the packaging. But I agree that there is potentially a need for us to make sure that we've got agility within the contract to respond to increasing needs if people are recycling more and if volumes do remain high. And I'm sure that's something that Chloe is going to be aware of and make sure that we have got factored into this as we go forward. Right. I think, Steve, have you got some wording for me?
I have. I was just going to say that I went to the workshops, which I thought were very good, and I don't consider myself in any way prevented from taking part in this or any other meeting as a result of that. So I'm going to carry on. And while we're on the subject of commenting on things like that, I share the views that I watched the scrutiny meeting on YouTube, and I thought it was disappointingly lacking in any real focus. And I think that's kind of indicated in the referral to us, which I think is a disappointment. However, back to what you asked me today. So the words I'd like to add are to note that the procurement process will include evaluation of options to reduce the carbon emissions of the waste service to contribute towards achieving the council's 2030 net zero target.
Okay.
Did I read that out too fast for you, James? Right. Will include evaluation of options to reduce the carbon emissions of the waste service to contribute to achieving the council's 2030 net zero target.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Chloe, can you just confirm for me that you're happy with that and that is something that will work and sort of sit alongside what we're aiming for with the contract? I can't personally see any problems, but I'd appreciate technical advice.
Yes, I don't see any problems with the wording. We will have a whole section on the environment and the environmental requirements attached to the contract, and that will be evaluated as a separate element of the scoring, as well as there being a social value element where some environmental aspects might come forward as part of that as well. So, you know, if we haven't spec'd it, you know, bidders might choose to put it in as a social value element too. So, yeah. Covered in two areas, as it were.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So I'm happy to include that as an additional recommendation at 2.19. I'm not seeing anybody else now indicating that they wish to speak. We've now got 19 recommendations before us. I have not heard significant dissent in respect of any of the items that are here. Therefore, I do not propose to take each of these 19 recommendations as 19 separate votes. Are we happy, colleagues, to vote on these recommendations in one block? So it's accept or reject all of these 19 recommendations that we've got before us. So if we're ready then, James, could you please take us to a vote?
Chair, this motion is carried.
Thank you very much. I think there's 5 of us. I don't know why there's only 4 people showing there. Who's missing? Oh, Judy voted. I thought, can we run the vote again so that Judy can vote properly?
Is it?
There we go. That's
Chair, this motion is carried.
thank you. For the benefit of everyone watching on YouTube, there's some conversation in the chamber about whether we should vote using buttons or using hands. the general public of North Herts will be thrilled to know what we talk about in between votes and in between items. The result of that vote was all members voted in favour. So the item is carried. That is the end of this meeting. I've been notified of no other business. Thank you very much, everyone, for your attendance tonight. You can get back to watching the Circus in Westminster, part 94. I've not seen Gavin Williamson come through yet. I think we need to end the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.